Hi guys, welcome back to the next episode of Don't Fear the Weight with me, your Tiny Titan podcast host, Vicky Masita. And today in the hot seat, I have got an extremely impressive guest. I'm very excited actually to talk to Dan. So I've got in the hot seat Mr. Dan Welburn, who is frantically just trying to get his camera sorted in between wipes and various other children's toys and things. The trials and tribulations that we go through with parents, right, Dan?
There we go. Yeah, it just fell down.
Bless you. So how are you doing, my man? You okay?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thank you. Are you?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much for joining me. Guys, I've brought Dan on. Dan is a bodybuilding prep coach and he is a professional bodybuilder himself. Obviously, I'll let him introduce himself and do all of the regular shizzle that we are doing. But I've decided to bring Dan on because he's had some insane results from multiple different class winners, especially in the female classes. So Dan, if for people who don't know who you are, because I've got a range of listeners, not just bodybuilders, if you could just give us a brief introduction of who you are, that would be great.
Yeah, so obviously my name's Dan Welburn. I've been bodybuilding for a lot of years. Since 2008 I started competing. Made my way through all the amateur ranks in NABA and turned pro with them in 2014. Did a little bit of downtime after that, a couple of operations, had a baby, all the things that occur as an adult sometimes, and you got to step back from bodybuilding. Yeah. And then I come back a couple of years ago, got my PCA pro card with them, and that's about it as far as my own bodybuilding, to be honest. Won the NABA Mr. Universe and things like that when I was younger. And yeah, now basically just prep coaching, moved online just before the first lockdown, and that seems to be growing quite well now. So I was very just gym based for many years, just working from the gymnasium where I work at, and then basically my missus had a baby and we lost an income, so I was forced online. is the real story, is why it really happened. So I was a bit apprehensive at first.
Sure.
But yeah, I moved on to that, and it's actually been really good. I'm actually fully online now, and I don't work in the gym whatsoever.
Fantastic. I suppose it came at a good time though, didn't it, with COVID and basically saying, well, guess what, you can't work in a gym.
Yeah, well, that's another thing that kind of pushed it along. So I was doing kind of 50-50 just to make up a little bit of extra income, like I say, to my missus. And then when we went into COVID, it kind of all got switched online. And then I kind of got used to that. And then when everything opened back up, I just kind of stuck with the online thing, to be fair.
Yeah, for sure. It's obviously served you very, very well. So what made you specifically focus on bodybuilding prep?
What, as a coach? Yeah. Well, initially, so I used to prep a few people locally. I mean, I don't know how long you've been around, but kind of 10 years ago, things were a little bit different. There weren't really many prep coaches or anything like that. You just got prepped by the local person in the gym that's competed before, or the gym owner that done it years ago, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was kind of that guy, being like the only really local person who was doing bodybuilding. Got a couple of young lads into it, and they won like the Junior British and things like that. And then a girl asked me to prep her for a show. A guy who I know is Mrs. actually, and I didn't obviously really know what I was doing. I'd never even watched the women's classes. I used to go to the toilet when the women's classes come on. That's what a lot of the bodybuilders used to do back in the day, to be fair. And then, so yeah, I just took hold of that, and she did all right. And she come like third or fourth or something. And them's the days in NABA when there used to be like 30 of them on stage at the qualifiers and stuff like that. So she did all right. And then another girl asked me to prep her the following year, which was 2013. And she won the British on the first crack with NABA, which obviously in them days was huge, like really huge. Yeah. And then it just rolled on from there. Somebody else asked me to prep them and she won. And then it just kind of rolled on from that to whereas it built up to people coming to see me in the gym for personal training and getting prepped over kind of 4 or 5 years. And we did all right with that, won everything, won all the NABA British titles multiple times in the universe and stuff. We just were local girls. And obviously the PCA formed and we started winning some stuff there as well. And then, yeah, that's catapulted to kind of where we are now. So it wasn't a faster growing thing, because it probably could have grown a lot faster if I'd have been kind of savvy with being online and all stuff like that. But I wasn't too fussed. I was doing all right and I was enjoying it. So
For sure, absolutely. One of the things that I brought you on for, obviously, which we just had a little bit of a chat about off air, was the actual transition that you do with female athletes. Now, I've noticed quite a lot, especially over the last few years, that women have really got a little bit more comfortable with getting a bit heavier in their off season. But I've seen yourself. Obviously, I've been following you for a while, and I'm about the same age as you, I think, realistically. So I've been in the industry.
24.
Exactly, right? I'm so glad that you told everybody our real age. So obviously, like 10 years ago, when I was still in there as well, we were, as women, there wasn't really a lot of women who would push their body weight up quite a lot. But if they did, they went too far, and then they had such a high starting point to come down in terms of prep that they just had this really awful prep. So can you just basically tell us, when a woman comes to you and they basically need to get pushed up to have that really solid off season, we want to talk about the transitioning stages into a prep, from start to off season to prep. So can you just take me through what your thoughts are when you have a look at a woman who's looking to actually move up a class, and how you would coach them into their off season?
What, to move up a category, or just to move into a prep?
Probably move up a category, because there's a lot of women now, me included. I mean, I've been trying to get massive for years, but I'm still a tiny person. But it's more along the lines of the bigger classes, because I've seen now even bikini girls, they are getting a lot bigger, and the figure girl classes are getting bigger too, aren't they?
Yeah, so I only deal up to kind of athletic figure, and train bikini as my biggest classes. I don't do any of the train figure or anything like that, because there's other things involved that I don't really like to get too involved in, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, so basically, it's just a steady course of kind of moving things up over time. It takes time to be able to push your body that far. You can't just slam the food down and train like mad, because you will just get fat, and you can't just be slamming the calories from the off. So if somebody comes to me, I mean, it's the same process regardless, and however the body grows, then the body grows. So if we're just trying to go through an off season, we're trying to go through an off season. If you're trying to move up a category, you're just going to stay in the off season longer until you're big enough to move up. But to be totally honest, it's not usually a scenario where somebody's just sat in tone figure, for example, and then they'll go, nah, I'm right in the middle of tone figure, I'm just going to move up into athletic figure now. That doesn't usually happen. It's usually they keep competing in tone figure until they start bordering the next category by accident, just because they're training. And obviously you don't want to stop anybody's training. They all train hard. And then we kind of move up into the next category from there. But food wise, so say I got a new client who's never done a proper off season before, and they've always done the old fashioned traditional ones, maybe like you said, and they've really pushed up, or they've kept getting too fat. So just take on board where they're at the minute. So everybody's going to be different. So if they're carrying too much body fat, the first thing that we're going to do is go into cut. Yeah, as long as the food is in a good enough place to go into a cut. So however long that's going to take. So if somebody comes to me in the fat and they're only eating 1,400 calories, 1,300 calories, we're not going into a cut. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to build the food from that point. If somebody comes to me in the fat and they're eating whatever they want, they don't really know what they're eating, probably over 2,000 calories a day, they're not really moving much, we're going to go into a cut. And I'll usually call that kind of like a new client phase. I'll say to them when they're starting off. So that'll be on the check-in form for a few months probably. And I'll just set the calories to a moderate place where they're not struggling to stick to it, because it's a decent amount of calories, yet they're steadily coming down in weight. So we might chase that down for 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks, depending on how long it takes to get the body composition into a decent point. And then from that point, we'll just switch things around and then start going back in the other direction, but just very moderately, just adding calories slowly, week by week. So initially, I think where people seem to go wrong with it is they just ram the calories up, and then they watch people just gain a kilo a week, a kilo a week, a kilo a week, a kilo a week, until they're back to where they started in like 5, 6, 7 weeks time. Whereas initially, say if I'm moving from like 1,400 calories initially, I will be trying my hardest to get to like 2,000 without even gaining any weight.
Sure.
So that might take a little bit of time to do, but it is possible. And then from that point, then you can be a little bit more aggressive as you move up. Because the way I see it is like, if you're just going to slam all the weight back on, move into a decent calorie level, what's the point? You might gain some muscle in the process, but then you're going to be back into a mini cut before you know it, because you put too much body fat on. So if we can move between that 1400 to 2000 level, just as an example, without really gaining any weight at all, and then as we push up to gain body mass from that point, say 2000 plus, if we're gaining half a kilo a week or a quarter of a kilo a week, then we've got a good 10, 12, 16, 18 weeks where we're not even going to have to mini cut, because we've just manipulated different factors to try and make it last longer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're still in a surplus, even if you're not gaining fat every week. Just because it's not firing up, it doesn't mean to say you're not in a surplus. You've stopped where you've stopped, so that anything upwards from that point, you're going to be able to gain new muscle tissue. I think where people get confused is they think they need to be gaining scale weight every single week, when fat comes on a lot faster than muscle, so you're not going to see the muscle coming on. So as long as you're not moving downwards, you're going to be able to gain muscle from that point. So it's just a balancing act, really, and everybody's different.
Absolutely, yeah. And what would you do in terms of like cardio? Because if you're going to be putting somebody into a mini cut, say, in order to improve their body composition, would you automatically bring down their calories first in order to do that one? Or would you increase maybe steps, or actually include any cardio? I mean, again, it all basically depends on who comes to you, isn't it? Because if there's a woman in the off season who's been doing 5 by 50-minute cardio sessions, for example, then there's not really a lot of scope to go to.
No, there's not, and that's why you've got to kind of judge from their starting point what's happening. So if they're in that situation, then you'd kind of see where they go and see if they start running over the first 3 or 4 weeks. And if nothing's happening, you're going to have to just send them in the other direction for a bit until you can sort it out. So that's part of the problems that we come across, and that's the situation they've got themselves into. That takes some time, and I'll just spend some time explaining to them why it's going to take probably longer than a normal person would, that we're going to have to figure out with this hole you put yourself in to carry on. But yeah, just manipulate all factors, all energy expenditure, whether it's cardio or steps or calories. If somebody's at a massive high calorie point, and I'll pull them down a bit and everything's moving, I won't touch cardio for a little while. I like to pull on the food a little bit first, but then if the food's at like a bordering uncomfortable point, I'd rather put the cardio in and leave them eating.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
There's a few factors involved, really. It's not too straight paced.
That's it, isn't it? And I suppose you've really got to take into account what these people do for a living at the same time. I mean, you know, if they're a shift worker and they're doing 12-hour shifts, and you want them to do 15,000 steps and, you know, 45 minutes worth of cardio, it's like, well, when are you going to fit that in? You know, especially if they don't have a very active job or something like that. So food is a good variable to manipulate at that point.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got them up to a really good standard in terms of their off season. How long would you like to actually keep somebody in an off season? Do you use holding and maintenance phases, or do you continuously like to see progress and non-stagnation?
Yeah, I don't like to see people stay still, really. We don't kind of sit things still for very long. We're either moving one direction or the other, to be honest. And then it just depends what show they've got planned, man. So it's like, I don't know, if we're usually running from one year to the next, aren't we, between like season and season. So it depends how long we can spend in an off season. Obviously, I'll try and encourage people to stay in an off season longer, because as we know, after you've gone through a decent length of a cut, the body takes its time to pick pace back up, especially with girls, more so than boys, because there's not all the drugs and hormones involved like there is with boys to take care of a lot of the damage. Girls got to deal with it with their own bodies for the most part, you know what I mean? So it's encouraged to have a nice longer, as long as a possible off season between competing, basically, and spend some time with food really up there. And that's what COVID's been great for, because we haven't had any shows. So I've had a real good run over the last year of being able to get people up and leave them up. So then when we've started coming down into the shows, and I like to do longer preps, call it preps, because we're not dieting like fuck after 10 minutes. I'll start at 18 to 20 weeks out, but that doesn't mean to say things are getting drastic. Off-plan meals will stay in for the first 4 or 5 weeks usually, and then they get pulled out as we get moving into the prep. I'll usually make a good chug on the calories to start off with without changing anything else, because we're being so, as you'll know, a woman's buffer for above maintenance is so huge. We never always know completely where it is. So just because somebody might not be gaining weight week on week, they might be up a 0.1 of a kilo or whatever here and there or what have you. You pull 500 or 600 calories from the diet and nothing happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We see that all the time. That's because the buffer's so huge, but we never quite know where that is for everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. So some people you might pull them down 500 and you might see 5 or 6 weeks worth of progress off it. Some people you might pull them 500 calories and nothing happens.
It's really
So
annoying though, isn't it?
Well, you just take it for what it is and engage it from that point. You'll tell. That's why I like to start early, because then you'll tell from 2 or 3 weeks. So if you've got someone who starts coming down, fantastic. You can slow them down a bit further down in the prep. Yeah. If someone doesn't move for the first month or whatever, then you know you've got a lot of other toys to play with to be able to start making things move. And you've not wasted any time because you've started so far out. So that's why I like a big kind of time frame on it.
For sure. I'd like to just kind of like pinpoint on that buffer a little bit, because a lot of people don't take this into consideration. I'm one of those people. I can probably eat, I don't know, probably like 300, 400, 500 calories more so. I mean, I know that for definite, it's probably about 250 grams worth of carbs that I can eat and my weight won't move. And then I can take them off and my weight won't move. And I just get grumpy because I've lost 250 grams of carbs, you know?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's it, isn't it? So, and there's a lot of people like that. And it's just, I think everyone thinks that you build up to like these 4,000 calorie off seasons, and then you pull 200 calories away and everything just starts coming down like you punch numbers into a robot and it just starts. It don't work like that.
No.
So you've got to go through different courses for different horses and just decide what's best for everybody. And that's where experience comes in. As you know, if you've been coaching for a long time, you can kind of recognize a few things with people and stuff now and again, and kind of just make judgment based on that. As you know, women might be able to go up to 5,000 calories a day for the peak of the off season, not getting fat, but some of them still have to come down to like 1,100 calories and a good bit of cardio to get in proper shape. It doesn't, just because someone don't get fat easy, doesn't mean to say they get lean easy.
Absolutely.
As we know.
And this is the other thing as well, like if you go prep on prep on prep, do you find if you've had the same client and prepped them multiple times, do you find their prep becomes easier, the same, or harder?
It always changes. There doesn't seem no constant pattern to it. I think the longer you've left it between, the better. But you can, I mean, obviously I've had some girls 4, 5, 6 years and no 2 preps are the same. And there's a lot of things that vary. The body never works same twice. So a lot of the time the body fat comes off different places first on different preps, which is a bizarre one, but it's not even bother wasting the time to try and figure out why, to be honest. You just got to react to what's going on at the time. It's not like we can stop and pause time for 6 months and have a study on it. We just got to react to what's going off there and then and figure it out. That's our job, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's it. And obviously to just try and keep mentality quite good as well with females, because you can see their mentality when they're like, oh God, the scale weight isn't bloody moving and I've still got a fat ass and this, that, and the other.
I just ban them from the scales.
Ban them from the scales.
I do, yeah, because I can see it stressing them out. So I'll just take them off the scales and I'll just do it all by eye.
Totally agree. I've done exactly the same thing personally, because it's just that I'm going through a little bit of a tidy up phase at the moment because I was putting on a little bit too much body fat and my scales weren't moving. It was just pissing me off. So I just thought, you know what? I'm just not going to weigh. I'm just going to take photos twice a week and we'll go with that. Because bottom line is the judges aren't going to ask you how much you weigh on stage. Not for a female.
No. I've seen some crazy stuff with body weights on preps before, real crazy stuff. So I don't pay. I mean, it is a factor. I'm not going to be one of them people who's online like, weight's not everything, blah blah blah, or weight doesn't mean anything. Sorry, I should have said all this shit. Because if you're going to get ripped, you're going to lose weight. Do you know what I mean? It's going to happen. It is one of the factors. Just because it doesn't move fluently every week, don't mean to say it's not a factor. But if it's boxing somebody's head in, I'll just take them off it. And I've done that a bunch of times, and then all of a sudden shock, the body just starts coming down because they've been stressing themselves out with it.
That's it, isn't it? And women are buggers for holding on to water when they are massively stressed.
And it just it stops them. So I'll make them put them in the boat of the car for the week. Don't let them get weighed between weigh-ins. Make them put the scales in the boat of the car and stuff like
that. Brilliant, I love it. Okay, so we've started transitioning into prep. We're now into, say, let's go into like the 8-week out mark. Is there anything that you would specifically change? I'm not going to talk about the magic peak week, that everything has to change in peak week because that's the magical week. But is there anything specific that you would look out for? I mean, I'd really like to have a look at Georgie's prep because Georgie looked absolutely beautiful on stage. And from where she started to where she obviously won the overall, because you had two girls actually win the overall, didn't you? So it was first time
Yeah.
and first time was figure, which was fantastic. So congratulations, nice work on that one.
Thank you.
So with Georgie, when was it that you actually saw her really kind of change? And did you ever have to drop the hammer with her? Because following her on social media from my own personal perspective, it's almost like I saw a transition almost like within 4 days. It was like she all of a sudden came in really quickly.
Yeah, it was mad. It was just that you'll have heard of the whoosh. I'm sure you've heard that expression before, where it's holding and it's holding, and it just then it just went. And then after a certain point, we was having to keep pulling her back because she just kept coming in too far and like dying off. And you'll know yourself, you start getting them signs. So I was having to check her in 2 or 3 times a week from quite a few weeks out, just to make sure we weren't overcooking her, to be fair. But yeah, with her, it was a funny one because we did it like a proper sticking point, which obviously that's happened before. And like we kept pulling on things and like nothing was really happening. And then we just seemed to click into this groove when we dropped into some carb cycling, where our body just was like, okay. And then I think literally, I don't think we changed her food for like, God, ages, about 7 weeks, I think. It was like a long time.
Wow.
I can't remember exactly. She'll be able to tell you better than me, but I'm just week to week in May. But it was like, it probably was about that, to be fair, because I remember looking at a diet at one point, and it was like the last time I changed it was something like the 5th of April, because I write it down on the thing, and then it was like the end of May or something like that, or early, whatever it was. Yeah, wow. It was some crazy amount of time, 6 or 7 weeks. But sometimes you'll get into a groove of carb cycling that with that, where it just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming, and you're not doing much for it. So the thing with air prep there was just monitoring where she was not coming down too much and looking too fucked, and then just pulling her away for a few days, taking the cardio off her for 2 or 3 days, taking the steps off, giving her a bit of food, and then dropping her back in the pond and letting her go for a little bit longer until that started to die on its ass a bit. Like I kind of was trying to just get hams a bit in towards the end there, and I just kind of saved that for the last, because I could see her body was just about to burn. You know, when you can see it's just about to go. Yeah. So I mean, I didn't tell her that, but I left it till that kind of like, obviously not the week out, but the 2 weeks out to 1 week out, to really give it a good shove and just pull them last little bits. So I thought if we destroy a body 4 weeks out, we're not going to recoup from it. So I just held it back until the last minute, and then give it a couple of guns on the last couple of weeks, and then it pulled it to where it needed to be, and then we backed off.
Definitely. So when you were talking about, maybe people don't actually understand what you're talking about, but you're talking about the signs and symptoms of fatigue. So when you go through a prep, your body is going to get obviously dragged through the mud a little bit, and you are going to experience symptoms of fatigue. Now, I really like your approach in kind of going, okay, let's have a couple of check-ins a week. Let's have a look at your fatigue stimulus. Let's have a look at what your body is looking like. And yeah, you're looking a bit tired, possibly looking too flat. There's a risk of maybe looking a bit stringy. So we'll take your cardio out just for 3 days. Now, what do you see happen to the physique if you literally just take that stress stimulus off? Because I'm assuming that you didn't actually refeed her at the same time as taking cardio out.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
I was doing. Yeah, I'll generally do it all in one go. Yeah.
Brilliant.
It just looks. It's hard to even put into words, but it just looks faded and shabby. And nothing's popping, and it just looks like it's about to die. So it's not something like I've often put into words, really, but it's just when you've seen it for years, you know what you're seeing, don't you? You know yourself. And so at that point, it'd just be a case of, say she was on, I think towards the second half of prep, she was on about 40 minutes of cardio, I think like 5 days a week or something like that. So I'd just say, stop doing that for a few days, like 2 days, and then here's some food. I'd write some food, whatever, on top of the plan. Eat that and just chill out and watch some YouTube, and then come back to me on the 3rd day and let's see what you look like.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's cool. Let's talk about the dieting aspect, because you are not a macro man. You ride a diet, correct?
Yeah, meal plan. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a specific way that you do meal plans for off seasons and in preps? Do you like the whole quote unquote clean eating and then having meals off plan, or do you use various different bits? And is there a specific methodology in your mindset for that?
So obviously on prep is meal plan, and it's meal plan. The cheat meals get knocked off usually about 15, 16 weeks out. So it'll be kind of a transition. So my off seasons will be, once we get to a certain point of calories, which let's say it's about 1900, 2000.
Yeah.
After that, I'll introduce some free calories, right? So you'll have your meal plan. So all of your quality foods coming from there, all your normal stuff, salmon, chicken, beef, potatoes, rice, stuff to fuel your body properly so you can train properly, recover properly, grow properly, do everything that you're meant to do. And then I might, from that point, start building a few free calories on top of it. So you might end up with 200, 300, 400, 500 sometimes per day. So the girls can then have the food, train like they're meant to, recover like they're meant to. Then if they want to go have some fancy coffee with a pal at Nero, whatever it's called, they can do that. Or if they're going round to the nan's house, they can have a couple of digestive biscuits so they don't have to be rude, blah, 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 things like this. Or they can save them calories up for a few days. And if they want to go for a Nando's in midweek with the pals, they can do. So if they've got 300, 400 a day, miss Monday, miss Tuesday, miss Wednesday, go to Nando's with your pal on a Thursday, you're covered, it's all right. So that's on top of that. So, and then I won't go too far with that. 500 would probably be the max, otherwise you maybe end up eating too much junk. Because obviously diets get up to like 4,000 plus sometimes with some of the girls. So that'll be mainly from clean food. And then obviously as the food gets higher, I'll switch out stuff that's harder to digest for stuff that's easier to digest. Oats out for cream of rice, basmati rice out for jasmine rice, and things like that, just to make life easier. And then every once a week, should I say, they get an off meal plan. So on a Saturday night, they'll get like a 1,500 calorie meal, have whatever they want. So that way they're not trapped in prison in the off season, there's no need for it in my opinion whatsoever. They've got all the good food all week, everything that they need to grow. They've got some freedom calories, let's call it that for the sake of Instagram, yeah. So they can have whatever, some coffee and some biscuits or whatever they want. Or they can have it from normal food if they fancy a bit of fruit or this or a bit of that, whatever. Everybody's different, yeah. Some people don't even like junk food. Some people like clean food all the time. And then if they've got the partner or whatever, the pals, they can go out for a meal on a Saturday night and not worry about it, or Friday night, Saturday night. And then they're not off plan. It's all accounted into the calories. So instead of just having a meal plan and then people end up cheating all the time anyways, because they don't want to be like that all year, because why would you? Then it's all accounted for. And then we can build the rest of the food around it and pull and push as we need, basically.
Perfect. No, love that mentality. I'm exactly the same. I like people having a little bit more freedom in the off season, and then when it comes into the closer end of prep, a meal plan for me is going to be better all the way, because then you know exactly what you are digesting, what you're taking in, what you can take out, without all of these differences in terms of fluctuating macros all the time.
Yeah, so that's just a transition into prep then. So we'll start prep at 20 weeks out, but really all that happens is the free calories get knocked off. So there's, you might lose 400 or 500 there just from that. So you're still eating the same food anyways. Then we'll leave that 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then the cheat meals get knocked off. So then we're down probably 300 a day from that, or whatever it might work out at. And all of a sudden you've not done much to your diet. You're 12 weeks out, your conditions come down considerably since 20 weeks out. And the only thing you've lost is the treats on top of your meal plan anyways.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. All right, wicked. So we've done that. We've done the prep, and now we're going to transition out of prep. That little period, from anecdotal experience, obviously from my own, especially from my very first show, is the everyone's done it. It's probably
we all did it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably the most dangerous period ever in anybody's bodybuilding prep, because you can walk off stage and you will binge. So 100%. I mean, especially that's it. And I mean, I remember doing it in my very first show. I actually ran to Pizza Express and ordered 2 pizzas and had polenta fries and a glass of wine and stuff, which was like the worst idea ever, whilst I was waiting for my pizzas to cook. Ended up basically eating that, puking, crawling back down the stairs and carrying on eating, because it's
shoving Maltesers in. See what else we can get in. Good bellies out there.
How do you coach that? I mean, obviously people have been having off-season, off-plan meals and cheat meals and things like that. So do you just allow them a post-stage meal and then
Oh yeah,
transition them up?
yeah. So I'll usually give them a day or two off. So if you're competing on a Saturday, obviously they're having that night off, obviously. So I'll give them the Sunday off, and the Monday morning, and then by then we've got a plan together and we'll start putting things together. And it's so individual from that point. It's difficult to gauge. So some people are right tight with it and they're good and they're able to stick to like just slowly pulling the calories up. So say they've been down to 1300 or whatever, I'll probably sling them a plan at around about 1700. I'll have asked for them before the show or shortly after a list of foods that they want to see on the diet. And then I'll write up a diet to try and accommodate as much of that as I possibly can. So we'll maybe go a few hundred calories up. If they can stick to that, fantastic. Sling them with the cheat meal straight back in on a weekend so they've got something to look forward to. And then from that point, it's just slowly tailing it up. And depending on what's coming up next, if they've got something at the end of the season, then we're going to have to be a hell of a lot more careful. But really, if they're going into the next year, we'll just start taking that up. So that'd be the scenario for somebody that's under control. I usually give people a week with that and see what they're like. If somebody's just going off their nut, I'd rather just feed them. I'd rather just feed them. I'd rather just take them up to say even if we're at 1300, 1400, I'd rather take them up to 2,500 on clean food and just jam them up with stuff. Because if you don't, the only thing they're going to do is they're going to end up 3,500 on junk food and totally out of control and feeling even worse for it. Absolutely. So that's usually the two extreme ends of the personality that you've got to kind of try and deal with. And obviously there are a lot of people in between them two extremes as well.
Of course.
So yeah, that if I was to give a rough frame, that's something like, but I mean, it's all individual depending on what they're talking to you about. And if there's anybody listening to this who's about to do the first show or what have you, just talk to your coach, man, because they're not gonna. We've all done it. We're from an era where that was what you was meant to do. Get back to your original weight as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And like it was a job to get back there within the first few weeks. Literally, that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
So we've been there. We've been through it all. If you've got a coach that's competed a lot, or if not the clients that have been through it, just be honest, because we're not going to think you've got like problems or mental problems or this and that. It's a very, very normal thing. Just communication is the only way to get it dealt with. And you don't have to feel guilty about nothing. You basically just put yourself through fucking self-harm for the last like 5 weeks, really.
Yeah.
You're not going to be judged on any actions that come out the back of that, especially women, because your bodies don't take it as well as men. Let a man binge for a month and keep him on steroids and he's just going to look good for it. Do you know what I mean? In a look good in his t-shirt. It's true though, isn't it? But a woman's just going to grab onto all of that and it's not going to be a very pleasurable experience. So yeah, you just got to deal with whatever comes from week to week. But if that's the two scenarios basically what I would kind of try and go with, and just include as much food as that they like as possible, without making them feel like crappy and what have you about it.
Sure. Just picking up on that last point, because this is the last little bit that I want to cover realistically. You were talking about a man obviously going and binging, and if he stays on steroids, then obviously he's going to look great for it. You mentioned that the only classes that you would go up to is about train figure, and that's your limit, because there are other things that need to be involved in the bigger classes. And I'm assuming, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I am assuming that you were talking about PEDs at that point and certain types of that women are going to be taking. So what's your stance on performance enhancing drugs with women going up to certain classes? Because obviously we all know even bikini girls are taking them these days.
Yeah, it's obviously very common. Well, I just don't like to, basically my rule of thumb is don't give a girl anything that's not going to make her look or talk like a girl anymore, or take any of them things away, to be blunt. If you're going to start seeing jawlines and voices changing, then it's not for me. So really, I mean, being truthful, like 5 to 10 milligrams Anavar should be enough. In very big stretches, maybe if you're trying to fill someone out the last few weeks before a show, or previously, if you're trying to push someone into another category, like you've mentioned, maybe 20 mgs of Anavar, but not really. It's pretty rare. So 5 to 10 mgs of Anavar should be enough for anybody. And then for me, that's going to depend then on whatever their genetic response is to bodybuilding to where they end up. Do you know what I mean? So you might give some girl 10 mgs of Anavar that's in bikini and she'll never make out of a bikini as long as she lives.
Yeah.
Or you might give somebody Anavar for 5 weeks at 5 milligrams and they end up top end of athletic just because that's how they respond to it. So it's all dependent on that. But for me, so far as like using other drugs to try and do this and that, I just don't want anything to do with it, really, to be honest. You know what I mean? It's just I don't want it on my conscience. If stuff starts going tits up for them and things like that, and I've seen it, you know what I mean? And I know there's a lot of things coming out at the minute. This might be a touchy subject, I don't know, but there's somebody coming out on the internet from wherever he is, New Zealand or whatever, saying like, well, girls are able to take tests and girls are able to take this drug and that drug and all these strong drugs, but just in less dosages. And there's science to back it and all this and that, which is fine. Let them back it, but I'm not going to be the guinea pig with my clients for that. If in 5 or 6 years that's what everyone's doing and everyone's getting away with it, fair enough. But Anavar's been knocking about for the last 30 years, and in small dosages, nobody's ever had any problems with that, as long as it's real Anavar, which you can get testing kits for now, so you shouldn't really get unstuck on that, which I do like to test things and make sure. But like that's 30 years worth of like hundreds of thousands of women taking Anavar probably, as opposed to some blokes coming out with bits of paper saying, well, if you take this at a lower dose, this definitely won't happen, which it might not. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying I'm not going to risk that on it, advising that to any of my clients, you know.
Sure.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
It's just I want them all to look like girls and talk like girls, you know.
This is it. I mean, I've got quite a big thing about it. I mean, I've got nothing against people who want to obviously take performance enhancing drugs at all. But I have heard that some bodybuilding federations are now cracking down a little bit more on women obviously looking like women, because bottom line is it is still women's bodybuilding, you know.
Yeah.
And it's something like that. I mean, like I said, I don't think that there is anything wrong, and I think some of the bigger girls, even the girls in the Olympia who are in the physique and the bodybuilding ones, I think they're beautiful. I really, really do, because you're beautiful no matter what you look like, you know, man, woman, or indifferent. But I think it's each to their own, and it's each person's desire to weigh up the risks, the pros and the cons of what it is that they want to take. So I'm in complete agreement with you. I think that you know, from an anecdotal perspective, again, like you said, it might be a bit of a touchy subject, but no holds barred and all the rest of it.
It's one of them, isn't it? And I'm not saying anybody's wrong and anybody's right. I'm just saying what I hold true to myself. And I just rather keep people right. And in the last 10, 11 years, whatever, I've never had anybody look different or change or this and that on what I've been doing. So I'd rather do that. And they should be marked down in a way for coming in with, do you know what I mean? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's all genetic response. I've only ever done one train figure competitor, and she started with me as tone figure, and she didn't need any of that stuff, so we rolled with it, and just landed very highly in train figure across a lot of federations, to be fair, a few years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not something. I mean, I do get girls contacting me for it sometimes, but it's just not my thing.
No.
And I wouldn't like to say I've got the knowledge to do it, to be honest, because I haven't started messing about with different drugs and this and that. It's not something I've got any experience with doing with women. So I'd rather leave that to the people that I have, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool beans. All right then, Dan. Well, I understand that we are getting up close on time here, so I'm just going to put you on the spot and ask the one question that I ask absolutely everybody at the end of the podcast. I know, right? See, you should have listened to an episode. I say this to everybody. If you could sit down and have dinner with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
Oh, Jesus.
Everybody says
living
that.
or dead?
Yeah.
I don't know. My nana probably would be one of them. She died when I was young. I'd like to do that. I'm just going to have to think of some random people on the spot now, aren't I? Because I don't know. Ronnie Coleman, obviously.
Of course.
I'm going to send that if he's not off his head on painkillers, that is. It'd be all right anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, I prefer him on the painkillers, to be fair. Yeah, I'll just go the same as everyone else and say Arnold Schwarzenegger, because I can't think. I would have thought of some better ones, to be fair.
Bless you. No, that's a cool one. All right then, my lovely. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. Guys, if you want to reach out for Dan for coaching or any other questions or whatever, well, he may not want you to ask him questions, but you know, if you want to contact him for any kind of coaching, then he is on Instagram, and I will put all of his details underneath the video as per usual. And as always, share, like, tag us in your photos, tag us in the listens, and I will see you on the very next episode of Don't Fear the Weight. Dan, thank you so much for giving me your time again, and I will speak to you soon.